the essence of Christian life and witness. All of this is just an introduction to something that I want to read. Something I want to share. So we'll cover like a couple of lessons, I guess, if not the whole booklet. Memory text. One night the Lord said to Paul in a vision, "Do not be afraid, but speak and do not be silent, for I am with you, and no one will lay a hand on you to harm you, for there are many in this city who are my people." The great English missionary William Carey used to say that he cobbled shoes to pay his expenses, but his real business was winning souls. Likewise, Paul worked as a tent maker for a living. Where's me? And this is from Acts 18, 1 through 3. But his real business was, of course, winning people to Christ. This week, we will get a glimpse of Paul's ministry to the church in the city of Corinth. The church, as we will see, was full of problems, many that were not unlike what our churches face today, almost 2,000 years later. Indeed, anyone who has been in Christianity for any length of time or who has been involved in church work could ask the question, have you ever found a Christian group that doesn't have any problems? The answer is, of course, obvious. Paul faces challenges in Corinth, but does so with the message of the cross, 1 Corinthians 2:2. Faithfulness to this message is also the way to face the challenges that we have today, as we will see this week and throughout this quarter. The message of 1 and 2, or 1st and 2nd Corinthians, applies to our lives as well. Paul, a guy called Apostle of Jesus. Paul begins his letter to the Corinthians by identifying himself as an apostle of Jesus, called through the will of God, 1 Corinthians 1:1. Compare with 2 Corinthians 1:1, his conviction regarding who he is in reference to Jesus is so firm that with a few exceptions, this is the way he opens all his letters. By the way, this is the front of this lesson study. 1 Corinthians 1:1 and Romans 1:1. What two elements of Paul's ministry are emphasized in these passages? See also Galatians 1:1. Paul speaks of his calling and apostleship as fulfilling God's will. He is convinced that his calling is not from men, but from God, Galatians 1:1. Paul was called by God from his mother's womb, like Jeremiah 1:5, as an act of God's grace, Galatians 1:15. And it happened so that he would proclaim the gospel of Christ among the Gentiles. In 1 Corinthians 15:8, Paul includes himself among those to whom Christ appeared after the resurrection, 1 Corinthians 15:5-7. A few verses later, he implies that his calling to be an apostle resulted from that encounter with Jesus, 1 Corinthians 15:9-11. The title, Apostle of Jesus, encompasses a series of concepts. Primarily, it conveys the idea of one whom Jesus sends. Nevertheless, Paul also uses this phrase to identify himself as a servant of Christ, Romans 1:1, Titus 1:1, Galatians 1:10, and as well as a preacher and a teacher, 1 Timothy 2:7-2, 2 1 Timothy 2, verse 7, 2 Timothy 1, verse 11. Whether Paul preaches or teaches, Christ is always in evidence. In short, Paul is an apostle of Jesus. Jesus is not only the center of Paul's apostleship, he is the center of Paul's life. Paul's thoughts and feelings were filled with the presence of Jesus. Evidence of this fact is that he refers to Jesus repeatedly in the opening and in the Thanksgiving section of 1 Corinthians 9 times in 9 verses. Paul loved Jesus so much that he couldn't stop thinking and talking about him. He wanted to share Jesus with those under his care, so that their lives would be Christ-centered too. While he was called to be an apostle, they were called to be faithful followers of Jesus in whatever capacity to which the Lord called him. Paul was called to be an apostle. What is your calling, and how do you know that it is your calling? If you don't think you have one, why not go right now and ask him to show you the work he chose you to do?